Hello there and welcome
to the new channel.
Here to help you see
the new you.
My name is Carmine Ortega.
Dennis Calamba.
This is Nato Agbayani.
My name is Juan Lu.
I'm Chino.
I'm Trisha.
This is Apple Manansada.
This is Attorney Carlo Ibanez.
This is Attorney Sheila Santiago.
This is Angie.
This is Orgami.
My name is Dante Salama.
This is Jesse Francis Rebostillo.
I'm Dania Cunha.
Mon Mendoza.
I am Mapet Erhino.
I'm Leo Bryan. Mike.
Nice for beer.
Sir Al Ian Barcelona.
Marvin Salazar. This is Sunny Haldons.
Heidi Lumainos.
This is Ivan Jude.
Patrick Geronimo.
Alan Perez.
My name is Erwin Ursua.
My name is Bob.
My name is Lloyd Luna and this is
Future.
The Talk.
Family Business.
The Puppet Stories.
Aftershift.
PNC Town Hall.
YOLO.
Marketplace.
The Home Buyer.
HR Hotline.
Danny Art Show.
Healthline.
Foreign Affairs.
COVID stories.
Awesome Day Show.
Thank you.
Money and more.
CyberNXT.
Women at Work.
Win Within.
Port Project.
The Big Picture.
Sometimes life lets you down and you feel that you are done. You just want a morning run because the fun is all gone. Sometimes life makes you proud when you look far and wide, when you leave the pain behind and see the brighter side. TNC gives you inspiration. TNC reignites your passion. TNC starts your transformation. TNC helps you see the new you. Sometimes life makes you blind and you choose something bad. You just wanna cry and hide and save your face from the crowd. But sometimes life makes you see the beauty in you and me. When you look up above, there is God and there is love. TNC gives you inspiration. TNC reignites your passion. TNC starts your transformation. TNC helps you see the new. We're here to help you see the newness of life. We're here to help you feel your hope is so real. You've got the power to see. We'll help you see the new you. TNC gives you inspiration. TNC reignites your passion. TNC starts your transformation. TNC helps you see the new you.
The new channel. The new channel. The views, opinions, and insights expressed in the following show are those of the hosts, producers, guests, and viewers. They do not necessarily reflect the position of the channel. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi, Pat. Happy Wednesday.
Hello, Ivan.
Yes, and also to everyone who's watching us right now, let me tell you this. Even in the digital world, the worst stabs always come from the ones that you trust. Now, how do we identify and prevent these insider threats from happening? Today, we are going to talk about that. Good morning and happy Wednesday. Welcome to the new channel. And we are here in CyberNXT, and we are here to help you see the new you.
Indeed, Ivan, an epic Wednesday to everyone, and welcome to CyberNXT, where we will highlight the significant best practices to improve your cybersecurity defenses.
Yes, and this, by the way, is Ivan Jude, your co-host for this show.
This is Patrick Geronimo, and we are streaming live. I am streaming live from Bulacan, and Ivan is streaming live from Makati.
Yep, that's right. All right. Am I coming in clear to you, Pat? Now,
yeah, a bit. You're okay. You're okay.
Okay, now,
Go for it.
now, just to make sure that we're coming in clear to you guys. Please click on the emojis and the reaction buttons down below. Let us know that you are here, and also let us know about anything that you want to tell us by sending us your messages through the private chat window. If you want to clarify or ask anything, just keep them coming. We'd love to read them.
Please go ahead and share this live stream to your social media circle or to anyone you think who can benefit from this, or you can simply host a watch party. Why not? For them to tune in, to tag people, mention their names, do as you please. Let's learn and have fun today.
Yep, and to all of you tuning in, thank you very much for the support, and we'd like to greet some friends. That's right, Pat.
Oh, yes.
Especially to our very own Direct Jay Saito. Happy birthday!
Happy birthday, Direct!
Another thing, happy free shipping. It's 11/11.
Finally. So
yes, super sale.
So for today, it's gonna be an exciting episode, Ivan. No, so you may have something to tell our viewers what currently happening
before
today?
We get very excited. We need to be aware of the things that are happening around us, especially in particular about our weather condition right now. So I'm sharing on screen the status update for severe tropical storm Ulysses, which is likely to become a typhoon within the next 24 hours. And it is actually bringing in potential or torrential rain, and it's threatening the entire Luzon area for another wet onset. So everyone, please be safe.
That's right. And today is November 11. It's 11/11. Lazada and Shopee, they're conducting a one-day super sale. So be sure to make yourself safe from unnecessary purchases. So Ivan said, be safe. This time, be sure to make yourself safe from unnecessary purchases. All right.
Okay.
And
those
also for today, United States of America, they elected the new president, no, Joe Biden, and the new vice president, Kamala Harris. So it was a roller coaster ride for United States. So I'm glued to CNN and even Fox News, and trying to really observe this presidential race, because I'm pretty sure there's a ripple effect globally. Whoever's gonna win this race, no?
Yeah, they're one of the world's superpower.
Ivan, now that I've mentioned election, I have a question for you. Do you believe in 100% fraud-free election? And do you think there's a possibility for someone to manipulate the results?
Wow, interesting questions you have for me today, Pat. The first question, do I believe in 100% fraud-free election? That I'm a little bit skeptical and doubtful. I've seen instances during my stint with being a volunteer for counting the election results. And
Yeah.
I'm a little bit doubtful if it's really 100% fraud free. And your second question talks about the possibility of someone manipulating the results. Well, this is highly possible, especially if a person or someone has a privileged access to the system, to any system there is. Now, maybe or the best statement that I can give is that it actually all boils down to the integrity of those insiders who have privileged access to the systems. Do you agree with that, Pat?
I totally agree because you have to make sure you hire the right people, you let people come in, you have to validate their background and so on and so forth.
Yes, correct. And actually, Pat, speaking of privileged access inside the system, no, you know what? This is actually one of the biggest threats that we have today. And I just remembered maybe around 7 to 8 years ago, I already left a company that I was engaged with.
Mhm.
And what surprised me was that when I visited the premises of that building again, I was able to get inside that building using my biometric fingerprint
So it's
access.
still so it's still available and it's
It's
still
still
allowed
active
you to
in
enter
court.
the premise.
Yeah, and the guard on duty actually didn't mind because I was able to log in with the biometric fingerprint access,
Uh-oh.
so he just let me in. So I don't know if they intentionally did that, or maybe it was just a flaw in their
Well,
process. Maybe
well,
there was no request.
apart from the flow, maybe yeah, you're right. There was no request that your name be removed in that database that would allow you to enter the premise. But yeah,
Yeah, but that's again a vulnerability that can be exploited. And another thing was that another experience I had was when I accidentally deleted a production. It's a production
oh no.
database using my privileged access. Back then, I was the IT operations manager, and I have this
So,
special privileged access to our database system. And can you just imagine that the business operations was going well within the day? If I remember it correctly, it was a Saturday, and all of a
uh-huh.
sudden, I was doing something with the database, and I thought that I was doing these things on the development environment, and I just typed in the remove or delete command for the database and wipe it all out. Now, a couple of minutes later, a flood of calls came in asking
Because
why
the
they're not
server
able to
system
access
is
the
not.
system. Then it occurred to me, I realized
Oh
I was
man.
not actually using the development environment. I was actually playing with the
The
production
production.
environment databases. Good thing
Wow,
we had backup. Now, in
that's
short, privileged access or insider access is actually becoming one of the biggest sources of threat today. Yeah, and
exactly.
even in a global scale. That's right,
Let's
Pat.
go global scale. Ivan, did you know that on Tesla, right, the car maker, no, a electric car
Okay.
maker, a malicious insider sabotage systems and send proprietary data to a third party. Who knows? Maybe their competitor.
All
And
right.
did you know there's a background story for Facebook? The reason why Mark Zuckerberg developed Facebook is to stalk. And apparently,
To
for the
stalk
last
people.
5 years, yeah, stalker, no, a security engineer abused his access to stalk women. Wow, the
So,
power of social media, no. And there's another one from Coca-Cola. A malicious insider stole a hard drive full of personal data. So
mhm.
it's pretty damaging. There's another one from the bank. A malicious insider stole personal data, including account information for about 1.5 million customers,
Wow, that's a
and
lot.
it was sold to a criminal organization. That's the best thing that could happen to your data, no? And
Ooh,
for National
scary.
Security Agency's spying program, it was leaked by Edward Snowden. They even created a movie out of it. I
Yeah,
think that was
yeah.
last 2016. No,
Yes, that's correct. 2016. I like that
that's
movie.
right. You watch
Yeah,
it?
and yeah, and also to continue with these kind of attacks, I just want to share with you some alarming facts about insider threats. But before that, allow me to greet some audiences that are tuning into our show right now. We have Dennis Brian Baricuatro, Miguel Ramos, Lenny Lee Criao, Eva Tuardon, and Mario Baladay. Thank you guys for
Hi,
tuning in.
everyone.
Yes, going back to what I said, let me share with you on screen some facts, alarming facts about insider threats. Now, did you know that 30% of breaches are actually involve internal actors? That's according to the 2020 data breach investigations report conducted by Verizon. Now,
No.
yeah, it could be intentional or unintentional. So, in any way, this
It
causes
still
30.
has the same effect.
Yeah. And what's more alarming is that, Pat, it takes actually 77 days for companies and organizations to contain an insider threat. It's not very easy at all. It takes more than 2 months. And companies spend a hefty amount of cash. You can see it on screen, 755 and $760,000 to contain an insider threat. So bottom
Jeez.
line is that if you're a hacker, this is the most amazing time for you to hack systems, because the systems itself are weakened, people's attention are drawn somewhere else, and
That's
the
right.
target or the users or the privileged users accessing the system are operating under duress in unfamiliar environments, like work from home. You're in Bulacan, I'm in Makati.
Yeah.
I'm not
Mhm.
in my usual office that I used to be in and to conduct or to perform my duties and my job. So in short, this is really, really becoming a very big problem. Insider threats. Do you agree with that, Pat?
I totally agree with you. So again, it's gonna be an interesting episode because we're gonna talk about it later. So what is
Yep.
your thought-provoking question, Ivan? Go for it.
No, yeah, thank you for reminding me about that. My thought-provoking question, since I already mentioned at the beginning of the show that the worst stabs can come from always come from those people or from someone that you trust. Now, I'd like to ask you, can we do something about this? Can we do anything to mitigate this, Pat?
Wow, I just remembered way back when, I don't know. I had this chocolate story wherein you try to finish it, and if you cannot finish it, you tend to put it back in the ref, right? So
Yep.
knowing that it will be safe there. And the next day, I try to finish it, all of a sudden it's gone. So definitely there's a trust issue. And I noticed
Someone
that
stole
my
it.
yeah, someone stole it and ate it actually. And I found out that my sister took it, and to validate it, I saw the chocolate wrapper under her pillow. So hi Ate, if you're watching, I blurted out the story.
Okay.
All
So
right,
that
so
supports my
uh,
statement.
we have a guest today, right, Ivan? So today we
Right?
dedicated this episode to tackle the threats lurking from within and to discuss how to stop the attackers that you trust. That's the most important thing. The attackers that you trust. So in this episode, we will talk about how to identify and prevent insider threats. So
Okay.
for this episode, our distinguished guest for this episode is a recognized subject matter expert in cyber threat intelligence, cyber warfare, and mobile security with a vast international experience in conducting businesses in over 70 countries worldwide at multinational enterprises and a proven track record of setting up and developing businesses across Asia, USA, and EMEA in both established enterprises and early stage startups.
Wow,
Let's
this guy
all
is big
welcome,
time.
I know, right? Let's all welcome on screen Mr. Igors Konovalovs, streaming live from Singapore.
Hi
Hi guys.
there,
Hi,
Igor.
Igor.
Pleasure
Wow.
to talk
All
to you
right.
today.
So I have a question for you. Let's go direct to the point. Igors, did you ever have an experience getting betrayed by someone you trust?
Yeah, we all did. I'm sure we all did. But in a cyber context, it has happened across many enterprises, and we have experiences and obviously awareness of such threats occurring quite often.
Yeah,
So it's definitely a very common occurrence, a life-long problem, I suppose.
Yeah,
that's
I
right.
do agree with that, Igor. Now, I have a follow-up question, and I'd like you to, give us some brief and simple to understand description or definition of an insider threat. What is an insider threat, Igor?
Sure. Well, fundamentally, insider threat is essentially a threat that occurs from within, from somebody that has a trusted access to the organization or to the data or to the people. So essentially, a person or an individual who is capable to operate within the environment as if it's a trusted person. Could make a similar parallel in a context of a military environments, a person who is holding certain data and basically using this data for potentially malicious purposes. So insider threat actor could be anyone that you trust, which obviously makes it very complex sometimes to identify this.
That's right. I agree. And now that you've mentioned it, who are these insiders that we are referring to? You've mentioned about these are the people that we trust. In an organization, probably, who are these insiders that we are referring to? Who are these people whose probably behavior exposes us to data loss and brand damage?
You know, Pats and Ivan, it's an interesting question. This can vary significantly. I would say that most commonly, insider threats would include either disgruntled employees, essentially employees that do not, for one reason or another, agree with the company's policies. It could also be employees under influence of foreign military intelligence services, or potentially actors that are willing to exploit trusted access of an internal employee for potentially monetary gain. And another interesting type of insiders could include activists, essentially people that are driven by ideological and sometimes political agenda, or could be also natural related causes. And those employees would be willing to potentially risk their trusted position and even, put themselves under risk of prosecution in order to pursue their political aspirations and related causes.
Wow.
Wow,
So
that's
you really
that's
need
very
to track everyone in your organization because, like what Igor's mentioned, if these are, state sponsored or somebody hired to do some damage inside, it's gonna be complicated.
I agree. And just to support what Igor said, I'm flashing on screen some resource materials that I gathered. There are actually, around three categories, categories of insider threats. And these are the imposters, whose credentials are already compromised, and we have malicious insiders or the disgruntled employees who, has this intent of causing damage in an organization. And lastly, we have this, they say, negligent users or those mistake makers. And thank you for expounding on this, Igor. Now, my second question to you would be, are all insider threats malicious at all?
Yeah, just like you mentioned just now, or showed on the screen, a lot of insider threats are actually unintentional in nature. And in fact, it is very common, perhaps even more common than any other type of insider threats. And this could occur due to quite a few reasons, but I would say common examples include accidental exposure of sensitive data on, for example, cloud resources. And this is especially relevant and point today in pandemic times, which basically shifts many workers unexpectedly to work remotely. And so basically that's one of the very common examples of insider threat activity that isn't intentional in nature, however, still bears very similar negative output and consequence.
Yeah, that's pretty good that you pointed that one out, Igors. I was actually thinking, what could be the other motivations, right? What are the motivations of an insider threat? You've mentioned about the unintentional part. So those people, probably it would actually start there. That okay, I was able to do this, and I can gain money out of it. And what are the real motivations to become an insider threat?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question as well, because it's perhaps the most diverse group of threat actors that are actually often manipulated or driven by either financial gain. And again, that's very common when somebody wants to monetize access to the systems or to the data and sell it. It can also be due to revenge or ego reasons, whereby somebody is unhappy about a colleague or management and want to expose them. And it can also be, as you earlier mentioned, stalking. So a person or an individual who is willing to engage in such activity, leveraging insider trusted access. Revenge might be justified. Well, there's probably no justification to do malicious things, but can also stem from a opportunity to inflict damage in places where, for instance, there isn't any legitimate reason to enter that type of arrangement. So I think those are more personal psychological drivers for insider threat activity. And as we mentioned earlier, it is also not very uncommon to see foreign intelligence services coercing people to basically facilitate a trusted access into the existing environments. And this can happen actually due to a lot of different reasons, oftentimes during a time of uncertainty. And that could be damage to the industry, financial issues. It could be potentially natural disasters or force majeure events, just like the one we're living now today. So those are the motivations for people to turn to insider activity. It could be either motivationally driven by some of the personal reasons, or it can be financially driven or potentially third-party driven.
I was really wondering how you can really, if there are some red flags that's going on with your members of the organization. It's gonna be an interesting for me. What is there a tool out there or a behavioral pattern to look for in a employee or in a staff, right?
Yeah. Well, before that, Pat, I'd like to ask Igor's before we move to that question. Insider threats are very interesting, and I want to hear out from Igor's what makes insider threats more harmful than those of external threats. What do you say about that, Igor?
Yeah, it's a very just question in the context of insider threat activity. Let's think about it in the following way. If you're an insider, an employee of any organization for that matter, ordinarily, those individuals are operating from an implicit position of trust and having natural access to certain tools and data as well as assets. Otherwise, that's probably not the insider. Now, having that type of access and level of trust enables, for example, if you take IT admin, to basically perpetrate quite a lot of activities and therefore become far more dangerous than any third party from the outside, even advanced threat group or advanced threat operators, because those IT operators within the organization who operate with the trust, they will have relevant access to, for example, credentials, or they will also not be subjected to extra level of scrutiny beyond what they have already underwent. And this is one of the chief reasons why essentially an insider is always going to represent a far higher risk, because access and trust will always be higher than any third party.
I remember my days, Ivan. If you're a system administrator, you have really an administrator
superpower.
Right? Probably they call it super admin. You have the admin account, and there's this super admin account. And if you have no ethics at all, you can actually pretty much do damage, right?
In a push of a button, you can bring the entire system down, so to speak.
Right. So it's very important that you really check your IT admins or probably leaders or those who have access to major systems, right? And Igor, thank you for that one. I have another question, right? Augmenting I asked earlier. How do employees become a compromised insider? If I'm an employee, I'm probably the CFO accessing some systems, or I'm a developer. Unintentionally, your account has been, oh well, intentionally your account has been compromised. I'm intentionally accessing the system. How do employees become a compromised insider?
I think the reasons for that can also stem from diverse events. On a psychological level, to become a compromised insider, if one is willing to become such, they would need to have certain pressures, and pressures could include, as we briefly outlined before, political instability in country, certain ideological causes, and oftentimes more benign to some degree events such as potential restructuring or loss of a job. We are living now through a time where insider threat activity is definitely heightened due to pandemic and the associated uncertainty. But
right.
any other natural disasters can actually contribute to somebody becoming a insider actor.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and also if you come to think of it, the sophistication of attacks and tools being used by malicious people externally can actually contribute to making these insider people become a compromised insider. Now we have phishing emails, we have malware, we have
Malware.
credential theft, we have things like patch the hash techniques, and all these contribute, and all these can be used as a vector by malicious people to compromise someone from the inside who has that special and privileged access. Now, another thing I'd like to ask our good friend Igor before we take a short break. Now, how do you detect these insider threats? What are the telltale signs that someone inside your organization is doing something really bad that can cause you damage? What are the digital or behavioral indicators that you need to be mindful of, Igor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd like to say that perhaps, or in my opinion, the insider threat detection is probably the hardest task and a challenge for any organization today, and most likely in the near future. And there are so many reasons why it's so complex. Now, there are best practices that organizations could and should adopt within their environments. And some of those best practices include a combination of things such as tools and processes and policies. I would say that it's imperative to make it a continuous process, but you cannot rely on just one particular detection vector. Whilst user behavior analytics and activity monitoring is definitely helpful and in some ways needs to be implemented almost on a mandatory basis, it is also essential to look at that as a process question, because tools alone are most likely going to be insufficient to detect abnormal and anomalous behavior.
Wow.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just to support that input coming from Igor's, I will actually be flashing on screen some guidelines or some ideas for us to really be aware of when it comes to digital threat indicators. You will notice it if someone is trying to obtain large amounts of data, and also if that person is sharing data with someone from the outside, or if that person or seeking or is requesting some access, special access to sensitive data that is not related to his or her job function. Also, we can say that some actions indicate that there's an insider threat if this person is behaving apart from his or her normal behavior, and
Mhm.
it's making use of unauthorized devices, say for example USB flash drive or external storage to save files that's not normally supposed to be brought outside. And why don't you share some behavioral threat indicators, Pat?
Wow. I was actually trying to remember what happened before. When you're trying to discuss this, looking at this slide right now, attempting to bypass security, frequently in the office during off hours. These are the things that we need to use to understand how an employee or a system will behave. But definitely you cannot do this manually. You need something like a platform that can actually correlate all this information and to raise a red flag. Now, oh, okay, we now have an insider threat. That is
Mm-hmm.
something that I'm really looking forward that should be made available in some of the significant markets out there, specifically, banking sector, manufacturing, or airline.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things. Now, before we take a short break, I'd like to tell our audience that we will be sharing some checklist for them to use to know if their organization is doing enough to address their attack. So we'll be discussing that when we come back after a short break. Stay on stream.
Stream. Welcome back.
Next. Yes. Before we proceed, Pat, I'd like to greet some people tuning into our show right now. Leo Bart, Salvador, Jordan Pillarina, Mary D. Cain, and of course, Attorney Clemente Pangandoyon. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
guys, for your support and for tuning in. Nathan Xavier Goles. Right there. Thank you. Thank you. Before we took a short break, Pat, I mentioned that we will be sharing to our audience a checklist that they can use to know if their organization is doing enough against insider threats. So this is very important. If you're a systems administrator, a network administrator, an information security officer, and especially if you're the chief information security officer. So right now, we'll be flashing it on screen, our checklist. We have 10 questions, and what they need to do right now is all they have to do is to grab a piece of paper and pen and try to answer yes or no to these questions. Now, why don't you start with the first few questions, Pat?
Sure. So, or can they type it on the comment box? We're streaming
sure.
live from Facebook. So, first one: have you identified and or classified critical data? So,
Yes or no?
next one, yes or no? Just comment, or probably you can do a screen grab of this one, and later on you can ask yourself if your organization is doing this, like Ivan mentioned. The second one
Yeah.
is, have your educated users Have you educated users on data handling procedures? Yes or
Yeah.
no? Next, Ivan.
Can you define normal user behavior? Tell us yes or no. And can you identify anomalous behavior? Again,
Oh,
answer
excellent
that with yes
question.
or no.
Next to it, do you have auditing capabilities in place to clarify users' access and authorization needs? And another one is yes or no. Another one is, do you have an effective identity and access management program in place? Answer
Yeah,
that one, yes or no.
IAM. Another four, do you pay special attention to users with privileged access or administrator access? Yes or no? Second, do you have a strategy for auditing users' policy adherence? All right, yes or no?
And the last two, does your incident response plan, oh, important to. This is very important. Does your incident response plan contain provisions to address insider threats? Last but not
Mm-hmm.
the least, do you routinely audit the security practices of your service providers? Definitely, you will engage with the service providers, contractors, and other business partners, specifically their identity, governance, and data handling process. Well, this is
Yeah.
so many, Ivan.
Yeah, if they happen to answer no to any of their bullet points, then they have to really listen to our discussion today as we continue and talking with and conversing with our guest speaker, Mr. Igor Skonovalov, streaming live from Singapore. And let's bring him back on screen. And hi, Igor, you're back.
Hi, guys.
Yeah. So another question for you, my friend. When do you detect and investigate insider threats?
I would say that the best way to do that is continuously. It should never be a matter of let's wait until it happens. So ultimately, insider threat activity in its own right is a fluid situation. It may occur over a period of time. It may start with something very, very small and then evolve into a much bigger problem. So as soon as abnormal and anomalous activity is detected, be that sharing data outside of the security perimeter, or potentially seeing somebody accessing unauthorized or having unauthorized access to the assets, that can also trigger a potential investigation. It doesn't mean that the person doing that is actually a malicious insider. However, it's always better to preempt the problem as opposed to trying to react to that. The damage and the fallout will certainly be far lower if you do that kind of on a continuous basis.
That's right.
Yeah, that really makes sense. No, it should be in a continuous basis. It should be regular. It shouldn't stop at all.
Because you don't have to think some IT managers or IT directors tend to just, we will not be attacked. We're just a small company, right? That's a
In other
wrong.
organizations, actually, do it in a one-time, big-time approach. They just sit and do this test and forget about it for the rest of the year. And as Igor said, that's not how to do it. Now, what's your next question for Igor, Scott?
Okay, I have a question. What do you need to detect and investigate insider threats?
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I suggest to look at it from a standpoint of how do we make an environment for the employees in a way that they don't become insiders. And with everything in life, whilst IT is important and tooling are always important, my advice to every organization is to try and act in a manner that does not encourage people to do naughty and malicious activity. And it may not be related to IT oftentimes, but the price of being reasonable to your employees and making sure that they are listened to and understood is actually far lower than the potential negative outcome of not doing the right things by your workforce. Now, as to the actual question, I think the requirements to initiate insider threat investigation would include certain trigger points that organization needs to establish on their own. And that often means, for example, identifying crown jewels. Fundamentally, there will always be an element of insider activity. A moment employee comes to work, overhears certain conversation, and takes it back outside of work, you can, technically speaking, think that this is already an insider threat because person is leaking information. But the degree of importance is also very important to establish. And there are certain data related to the customers that organization may process. And so this data needs to be identified and classified accordingly in order to basically focus on sort of Pareto principle, 20-80 rule, focus on 20% of threats that will contribute to 80% of the impact. And the same goes with the insider threat activity. As long as organizations can determine which data represents highest value and highest risk, the insider threat investigation should always focus on identifying any suspicious and anomalous activity associated with the handling and dissemination of such data.
Wow. So, identifying this threats, like what you've mentioned, if you have a new employee and that person say saw something, right, that is pretty unusual or significant and try to relay it outside the company, it's already an insider threat. So Igor, I have a question for you. What are some technical IT solutions that can be used for preventing insider threats? Definitely there are some departments will be involved in preventing these insiders, but in a technical IT solution, are there any tools that they can look at?
Yeah, there are quite a few. There is actually an array of tools available today for various companies. You can, broadly speaking, categorize them in some groups. I would say user activity monitoring and behavior monitoring and analytics is one group of tools that help organizations to monitor and determine something out of the baseline. The other interesting tool is data loss prevention technology that also helps to limit the access to the data and make sure that it stays in the perimeter. Now, all of that is very important, but unfortunately, with the remote working environment today, those tools also cannot address it in full. The other thing that organizations typically employ that help with both insiders and outside threats are traditional EDR tools, since they can detect activity that is exploiting certain access and related aspects. Mm-hmm. So I would say across those tools and technologies, organizations can definitely derive extra value in detecting and hopefully stopping threats. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage, different IT stakeholders and security stakeholders to look around and see what may fit best. Because again, analytics may fit best in an organization that actually has a lot of data to process and a lot of employees. But in a small environment, it might be better to work on something more around privileged access management, mm-hmm. which is also another very good way of addressing who has access to certain data. I'll give you an example from the field, so to speak. In one organization that I worked, the CEO of the company actually had one of the most limited access to the data, and that's understood because often CEOs, depending whether technical or not, may represent the highest hazard to the organization, since they may actually choose to socialize certain data which could be catastrophic to the overall impact. So it is not uncommon that the highest level in the organization doesn't necessarily possess the most advanced access. And the other good practice using different data access management tools is making sure that restrictions are applied at a department level. Nobody needs to know everything. There could be reasons to, cross-pollinate this information and employ access from different departments, but the best practice is to restrict that and provide access and provision access often as and when needed or as per the rules required. The other interesting example, also coming from experience, was in a military environment. without going into specific details, I have participated in my time in many different government and military projects. And what was interesting about those projects was when we were basically discussing certain internal infrastructure with the IT stakeholders and people who were in charge of making things happen, they were unable to share the most basic things, and that was as per the policy they were following. But an interesting thing happened after that. A few days later, when we attended an event, when one of the CISOs of military actually participated, and this person had no hesitation to share probably 10 times more in terms of the data without even thinking of how it could impact the organization. And it could be that the data he shared wasn't necessarily the most sensitive data of them all. However, this just shows the difference in perception depending on the role.
Wow, and this is on an event, right? In an event.
That's
Imagine if you're actually listening, okay, I think he's already disclosing some classified information.
Now, in relation to that, I'd like to ask you, Igors, can insider threats be mitigated by technology alone?
It is not possible today, and it is quite unlikely to be possible in the near future. My personal opinion, it will never be possible, but never is a very strong word. So I would say that in our lifetime, it is highly unlikely, unless we operate in a completely closed environment where people don't have access to the outside world. I believe it will be exceptionally hard to completely mitigate it and prevent it.
Yeah, I do agree.
In fact, to add one thing here, this comes back to the point of what is the best mitigation strategy. And I do believe that in this particular case, it isn't a technology or even a process. It's about treating and handling your employees with the utmost care so that they could never even think to do harm. And that's why, many organizations often say we are a family. There's a underlying.
There's a reason behind it.
Treat your employees well, so to speak. Now, we'll be taking a short break for now, but before that, I'd like to tell our audience that when we come back, our guest speaker, our good friend Igors, will be sharing his best practice recommendations for preventing insider threats. So stay tuned, and we'll be back. Stay on stream.
And
welcome
we're back.
CyberNXT. Yes. So just before we took a short break, I told you that our guest speaker, Igor Konovalovs, will be sharing his best practice recommendations for preventing insider threats. Now, why don't we bring back our good-looking friend from Singapore back on screen, Direct? There he goes. just before our show, Igor shared to us his best practices, so we'll be flashing that on screen and ask Igor to explain it one by one. Is that okay with you, Igor?
Yes, with pleasure.
That's great. So here you go. These are the 9 insider threat mitigation and best practices. So why don't you discuss it one by one? Number one, monitoring user and device behavior.
Yeah, as we just discussed throughout this talk today, behavior analytics and monitoring plays a pivotal role in identifying suspicious and abnormal activity. This can be done predominantly through technology and tools. However, in certain aspects, it can also be done through a careful process and policy. But generally speaking, tools play the major role here in order to achieve that level of or that state of monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is actually restricting opportunities to employees in order to, again, limit access to unauthorized or having less opportunities to provide unauthorized access to people within the organization. But that's especially relevant for smaller businesses that start off with holistic access for everyone. And then as they grow, they realize that certain data should be more restricted. And cybersecurity savvy enterprises may have a better hand at that and better data management processes. But for organizations not in IT or cybersecurity industry, it's important to think of that early and maybe even involve some third-party consulting to perform such delimitations. Then the third one is establishing right policies and marking and classifying data. Again, very important aspect in order to decide what data is actually the most valuable data. Trying to protect everything most likely will result in failing to protect anything, and therefore it's imperative to find those assets that do require the most vigilance and security. And then number 4 is identifying the most sensitive data and building special controls around it. So again, very similar to what we discussed, essentially your crown jewels and building ring fence and guards to prevent unauthorized access and dissemination. The other thing is communicating clearly and in a easy to understand language, acceptable user policies, because that can also help to serve as a deterrent strategy so that employees understand their responsibility and potential repercussions should they perform something of malicious intent or activity.
That's right.
And then, of course, use of data loss prevention tools and related technologies in terms of behavior analytics to identify anomalies. I think we spent quite a bit of time today talking about it, so clearly, I guess it's important. The other thing is privileged access management. Again, it's all about restricting data and having levels of data, almost like a clearance in military environments where, depending where you sit and the level of clearance you have, you may have access to certain data or certain facilities. And that's especially relevant for not only internal employees, but also contractors and third-party suppliers.
Yeah.
And the last 2 are more around the collaboration and education. So internal education plays an important role in almost everything we do. So to help employees to understand what could constitute abnormal activity, as simple as unauthorized physical access to perhaps something around sharing data that cannot be shared outside of the organization. It's surprising, but not everyone thinks that could be damaging. So education is critical.
Wow.
I agree.
Yeah. I agree. So for all our viewers, this is the right time to screen grab this one that Igor is currently sharing to us. And I think at the end of the day, it's pretty important, the education part. I think still my personal opinion is the best defense still is the knowledge on what to protect, because at the end of the day you really cannot manage what you cannot measure. If you don't know the important aspect of your organization, especially these crown jewels, and definitely you don't have an idea how to really protect it, or if you're the CISO, or you're the person assigned to implement such tools, say you've mentioned about the DLP, the UBA tools, and PAM solutions. If you're a small or a big organization and you really don't know how to prioritize these tools or prioritize the implementation of these tools, then you're going nowhere. Is that correct, Ivan?
Yeah, I do agree. And lastly, I think Igor is going to share a little bit about the ninth best practice, collaborating with law enforcement. What do you mean by this, Igor?
That is very important in order to be able to respond as quick as possible to the insider threat activity. It can also serve as a good deterrent strategy, as long as employees are aware that there are very clear channels enabling organizations to involve law enforcement and notify them either in advance of potentially developing insider threat activity or immediately pursuant to the one.
That's right. That's right. Here in the Philippines, Ivan and Igor, I may have to share this. If your company, if you have a suspected breach, in 72 hours, you need to inform National Privacy Commission about it, right?
Correct,
That's the first
correct.
thing that you need to do. All right.
Yeah, and if you fail to do that, you'll be fined a hefty amount of cash. But I hope it doesn't get to that point.
Of course.
All they need to do is just follow our discussion, take the screenshot of the best practices, and I think they're off a good start in preventing insider threats from happening to their organization. And thanks to our good friend Igors for sharing a bit of his time today to be with us and to share with us his thoughts on identifying and preventing insider threats. Yeah, I've learned so much from you today, Igors, and I'd
Thank you
like
so
to
much.
thank you for that. And by the way, we really appreciate you accommodating our request, and even though it's too short of a notice to be our guest speaker for this episode. And you know what, Igor, we will definitely invite you again to join us on our upcoming episodes. Is that okay, my friend?
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks everyone for attending today, and always delighted to speak to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Igor. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Take care, guys.
All right. Yeah. So that's it, guys. We've learned so much from our topic, identifying and preventing insider threats, because again, it's one of the biggest sources of threats in our organization. And mind you, it can really cripple our operation. So you need to take action against insider threats. Is that correct?
Exactly. Definitely. And if you have further questions, you can actually send us an email at cybernext@ipvnetwork.com. You can also connect through our LinkedIn page. You can look it up and go to our website, ipvnetwork.com.
Yes, that's correct. Our website, ipvnetwork.com, and our email again is cybernext@ipvnetwork.com. We'll be expecting messages from you guys. Don't worry, we are here to support and help you, whatever it is about cybersecurity. Thank you so much.
There you go. Thank you. So we need to do a plugging. If you could share the plugin page.
Yeah, of course, there are a lot of shows that they can tune into TNC, the new channel. And Direct, can you please bring them on screen? Yep. The Big Picture shares inspiring stories of notable personalities. It's Mondays to Fridays at 7 p.m. We also have HR Hotline that introduces us to the wonderful world of human resource management. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, 12 noon.
Have an insightful Saturday afternoon, because the family business is everyone's business at 4 p.m. The fourth project is about life, business, and success. Stories live from Dubai, UAE at 6 p.m. or 10 p.m. Philippine time every Saturday. Usapang Beauty is about beauty beyond what your eyes can see. Thursdays and Saturdays at 5:30 p.m.
The world has faced an unprecedented pandemic. It's time to hear positive testimonies straight from those who recovered from the disease. COVID Stories, Saturdays at 10:30 a.m. Discover your life purpose and learn from others' turnaround stories by tuning into U-Turn, Mondays and Thursdays at 10:30 a.m. The Home Buyer is where you hear remarkable stories about building and owning a property, Mondays and Thursdays, 4 p.m.
Laugh and learn through the Puppet Stories, Mondays at 5:30 p.m. Magbenta, bumili at tumulong dahil bukas na ang TNC Marketplace, an online night bazaar Thursdays and Fridays at 10 p.m. YOLO is for all of us to understand that law is fun and cool too. Thursdays at 8:30 p.m. Watch and learn about money and more. Streams live from Philippines and the US. Tuesdays at 8:30 p.m. Philippine time and 5:30 a.m. California, USA.
Yes, and we have this show where we have two leaders in one platform. TNC The Talk, Mondays at 12 noon. After Shift is a chillaxing show about your choices and lives after work, Wednesdays and Fridays at 8:30 p.m. Discover and learn strategies on self-leadership to win in life through Win Within, Saturdays at 8:30 p.m.
Dream, achieve, nurture, inspire. Tag your kids along and watch Danny Art Show Fridays at 5:30 p.m. Global issues, common interest, learn together across borders. Foreign affairs streams on Tuesdays at 10:30 a.m. And because health is wealth, Healthline on Wednesdays and Fridays 4 p.m.
Awesome Day, Mondays at 2:30 p.m. Make sure to make your day an awesome day every day. And also start your Saturdays celebrating the women at work, 9 a.m. Saturdays. Tech U helps you understand the emerging technologies shaping our future, Fridays at 2:30 p.m. And of course, in a world where everything is turning out digital, CyberNXT aims to empower people and companies to be secure in a digital world. Streams Wednesdays at 12 noon. Also, you can catch our TNC original shows such as One Day, an inspiring 30-minute storytelling. It alternates with TNC Town Hall, co-hosted by TNC founders Lloyd and Apple. This show is where we talk to you, our valued audience, about our shows on TNC. And there's more coming up on TNC shows that will truly inspire you. So please, please, please follow our channel on Facebook and YouTube and let us help you see the new you. All right,
Wow.
that's awesome. There's a lot of shows in TNC. Yep. So, Pat, by the way, before we say goodbye to our audience this episode, I'd like to remind them I just received 2 emergency alerts from NDRMC and telling us that there's a possibility of this weather turning into a storm surge to about 1 to 2 meters high. So we have to really, really, really be careful and hope everyone is safe. And also be safe from unnecessary purchases. This 11/11, although it's
Shopee free
shipping,
shipping.
you don't need something, don't order, don't add to cart. Please be cautious about your purchases today. And lastly, more importantly, please be safe and do something about insider threats because it can cripple your entire business operations. That's it.
Right. So we hope that this episode was helpful and informative for you. And if you enjoyed our show, hit the like button, share this to your social circle, and click on subscribe. There are a lot of interesting cybersecurity matters that we will be talking about, and we invite you to learn more with us in our upcoming episodes. So again, if you need advice or guidance on cybersecurity, feel free to get in touch with us. Email us at cybernext@ipvnetwork.com, and we will be more than happy to assist you.
Of course, that's true. So catch us again next week, same time, same place. We need to be aware, we need to be informed, and most especially, we need to be secure. In this digital world, we need to be mindful of the things that we do because your next cyber strategy should start with you. This is Ivan Jude saying goodbye for now. Thank you for tuning in to CyberNXT.
This is Patrick Geronimo. See you again next week.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.